most likely. And if you're not speaking, you can feel free to mute yourself, and you don't have to worry about don't have to worry about anything in the background
Yeah,
doing anything.
do that when I'm on this. The most important thing, because I have a lot of background noise. Let's see. Oh, and I can start the share computer sound. Oh my gosh. Please restart your audio sharing application, such as media player after install to continue sharing computer sound. What is this? That wasn't here yesterday. Is it good?
All right, so the count is, I see your screen. Hey, real quick, before anybody hops. Yeah, I see it. I see the broadcast begins.
I can't hear you.
Check 1, 2. Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me, Jed?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, I cannot hear you. So.
Check 1, 2.
Okay, Jade, was that you?
Checking my mic. 1, 2.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. So at what point are we playing that video?
Which one? The Michael Ferris?
Yes.
He's reading the First Amendment, so it'll be pretty quick.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get a resolution to that restarting your audio player? What was that about?
I have no idea. I just had to put in the computer password and it let me through. I don't know what that was.
Oh, okay.
Didn't ask me for it yesterday.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, this is Donna Worley. I didn't know, I've watched Zoom calls, but I've never participated on one, so I wanted to make sure that you could hear me.
Well, congratulations. You successfully executed a Zoom call.
Thank you.
Miss Donna, will we be seeing you today, or is it just going to be your name?
I guess it'd just be my name. I don't know how to do it for you to see me, so I don't know.
Gotcha. Do you have a camera on your computer?
Yeah.
Hey, Julie.
Well, I'm on my phone. I'm not on computer.
1 second, Julie. I'm in the middle. 1 second. Let me.
Gotcha. Miss Vanity, could you make me the host once more, please?
How do I? Oh, okay, too easy.
Okay, you are now the host. So much. All right.
Testing.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, this is Patty Lyman. I had some problems with my Zoom yesterday, so I'm just calling to make sure that it's working.
It seems great, Patty. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. I will be calling in at 3:20.
All right, we'll see you there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Joy. Coming in okay?
Yep, coming in just fine.
Okay.
And Donna, I see your camera. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Dick Manasera. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. We'll be listening.
All right, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Same here.
And also Pastor Leon Threet on the call, just doing a check-in as well.
All right, now who's that speaking now?
Leon Threet, Pastor Threet, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Gotcha. And I see your name is Archie Threet.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Loud and clear, good sir.
All right, is it okay? Is that camera station okay, or can I turn it landscape? I'm not sure which is best.
Landscape would always be best, but there you go. Very good. It fills the screen if you turn it sideways.
That looks good.
Perfect. All right, I'll go with that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Donna. I saw that too.
You're welcome.
JY, how are you today? Might be away from their computer there. Okay. Hi, JY. I see you, but I don't hear you. Give me a thumbs up if everything's good. Okay, great. I hear you loud and clear.
Come on. We're not on live. We're just. Mike's on. Hmm?
Good afternoon, Janet.
Hi, Pastor Marlon. Oh, can you hear?
I can.
Okay.
Couldn't hear before. Now I can hear.
Glad to put a face with the voice that I hear. I told you that after you introduce yourself, then we're going to display a copy of the Constitution as you read. We decided not to do that, so you will be up on the screen the entire time you're reading. Hello, Donna.
How are you?
I am blessed and highly
Apparently
favored.
they're not muting themselves. Right, so
I
the
am
live
too.
screen is hearing them, whatever they're saying to us, they're hearing, you know. So she just called to tell me that she heard me.
And yes, to that, that's normal. That's so we can prepare for the call and get the greetings and everything out of the way. And what's streaming now to the internet is a countdown, and below that, it lets them know that mics are open so participants can communicate before the broadcast starts.
Very cool.
Right. As we approach as we approach the 6-minute mark, I want to let everybody know that we're currently streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and to standamerica.us website. And because we're streaming to multiple locations, the audience will get about a 60 to 90-second delay. So if it says 6:30 hear us, it's pretty close to 7 or 7:15 for them. That delay is normal and expected, but I would encourage you guys not to watch the Facebook feed while you guys are on the Zoom call because it might disorient you.
Okay, appreciate that.
No worries. Oh, also remember, if you're going to talk, to unmute your mic. I see a few red mics there, and that's okay because there may be background noise. Just letting you guys know, mics and video channels open when you're ready to speak.
Mr. Johnson, good to see you today.
Good morning, good morning. Well, good afternoon, I'm sorry.
Depends on your perspective, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. And we are an hour behind, but it's still afternoon.
It's still afternoon. Yeah.
Well, how is everyone?
Well, I am blessed and highly favored. I think everybody on the call so far is excited about what we're doing today.
Well, praise God. To him be the glory.
Amen.
Yeah.
Pastor Marlin, I have a question. Pastor Marlin, can you hear me?
Okay, who's speaking now? Hang on a second. Hello. Yeah.
You saw the yellow cabs blocking the Brooklyn Bridge now?
Pastor Marlin, will the Constitution be scrolling on the screen in front of us as we read?
We were going to do that, but we decided not to. It was just a complication that we didn't want to deal with.
Okay.
So I think what Bishop Jackson is going to do is just to encourage people to download a copy for themselves whenever they have an opportunity, so they have a copy of their own.
Right. So we have our material in front of us, and we simply read it looking at the camera. That's it. It doesn't really matter what's shown on the screen, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
I'll be right back.
All right. Tim just caught you on the FRC broadcast. Quite a good presentation there.
Yeah, we just finished up and I went to another part of the building here, so just honored to be with you.
I'm glad to have you.
So you can talk now. Pastor Marlin. Pastor Marlin?
Yes.
I would say pull it closer to.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing.
Oh, your camera. Start video right there. No.
Hi, is my video working? Is my microphone working?
Yes. Yes.
Who was asking?
Hi, Jerome Corsi, I'm here.
Hi, Jerome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yeah.
Hear me?
I can hear you.
I'll mute my mic until it's time to come on.
I encourage everyone to do that until it's time for you to read or to speak. Please mute your mic. That way we won't be hearing any background noise if someone else is speaking.
You hear me all right, Pastor Marlin?
Again, I can hear someone, but who's speaking? Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Constitution read-in. My name is Pastor Marlin. I am holding the fort until Bishop Jackson is able to check in. He will be checking in here in just a minute or two, and we'll get started. For the participants here on Zoom, again, I would like to just encourage you to mute your mics until it is time for you to speak, so that we do not hear what's happening behind you. If you need to step away from the computer or whatever instruments you're using, just cut your video. and everything will go all right. Bishop Jackson will be commenting on the preamble as well as giving an introduction to what we're doing today. And he just finished his radio program on American Family Radio, so it'll be a minute or so before he gets checked in. So just hang with us until that happens, and then we'll proceed. We set this up for 3 hours to give us adequate time. I don't think it's going to take that long. But just to make sure that we are going to get through completely without having to rush. So we're looking forward to this adventure of reading every word of the U.S. Constitution. I don't know when the last time was that any of you have done that. I would imagine that it's probably been quite some time, if ever, that many of us or most of us have actually read the U.S. Constitution from beginning to end. And it's been an enlightening experience for me because I'm the one who set this up and was able to go through section by section to determine how long each reader should have. And it was very enlightening to see things that I didn't realize were there, and how we talk about the knowledge that our founders had, but a lot of what we're actually looking at is the wisdom that God gave them in setting this up. As Bishop Jackson often says, this is the longest lasting government document in the history of man. And so we just, we're experiencing something today that has never been experienced before. And so we're just excited about what we're doing, what's happening today, and just glad to have everyone on board.
Can you see me and hear me, Pastor Marlon?
There's Bishop Jackson. Yes, we can. Welcome.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm glad to be with you all. Thank you all for joining us. And I'm supposed to kick this off. Have we prayed, by the way?
No, we haven't yet.
Well, you know what? Let me lead us in a word of prayer, and then I'll get into the preamble and make a few comments, and then turn it over to these other readers and commentators who are coming up. Pastor Marlon, you've done a tremendous job putting this together. So whether you're watching folks on Facebook, or you're watching on the Stand website, or you're watching on YouTube, we are glad to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. We consider this to be a very, very important moment. So before we go any further, I should say, let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we are grateful as Americans to live under the most successful constitution in the history of mankind. And we do not believe that's true because we're lucky. We don't even believe it's true because we're smarter than other people, or we're somehow morally superior to other people. We believe it's true simply because our founding fathers rooted and grounded and established this nation on faith in Almighty God. And Lord, we believe that's been the fundamental key to our success as a nation. The idea that our rights and freedoms don't come from government. They didn't come from our founding fathers. They come from you. And Lord, they didn't even turn over to themselves absolute power. Rather, they turned over to the people freedom to govern ourselves. The first words in our Constitution are "we the people," not they, the icons, they, the prophets, the prognosticators. They did not lionize themselves. They put "we the people" in the forefront of this great document. And now, Lord, we have people who hate our Constitution, hate our country, hate our way of life. Help us to enlighten all of our citizens to understand how blessed we are to have this Constitution, how blessed we are to be Americans, and how important it is that we act to preserve the blessings we've been given. Bless every reader, every commenter, every person who will view this program this afternoon. as we celebrate Constitution Day. And Lord, may our Constitution last, if you tarry, Jesus, may it last another 233 years and beyond. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, folks, thank you all so much. Let me get right to it. My portion of this is the preamble. Now, you know, it's interesting. There's a school of thought that says that the preamble is not really law and that it's not really important and that reference should never be made to it. And I think, unfortunately, our courts have pretty much followed that precept. And frankly, I disagree. I really believe that our preamble, the preamble to this Constitution, was and is what I call the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, not the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, but the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, because it sets forth a framework for what the Constitution means, why we have it, what it's designed to do. And I think it says a great deal that if we made reference to it, we could have avoided some of the pitfalls we've experienced since the Constitution was first ratified. So you all know how it begins. We, the people of the United States. Now, I mentioned it in my prayer, we the people, because our nation, unlike any other nation in human history, is grounded on the fact that the sovereignty of our nation belongs to the people, not to the government and not to any ruling class, but to we the people. And that we, the people, delegate through this Constitution to our government certain limited powers for the purpose of serving us. You know, we don't have a government that is designed to rule over us. We have a government that's designed to serve us and to protect those fundamental rights that the Constitution recognizes. So those are really sacred words and important words to remind us of why our nation, our Constitution is exceptional. And then it says of the United States. And, you know, sometimes the federal government can get beside itself. And it's important to remind ourselves that the Constitution was ratified by the states, that the federal government didn't create the states created the federal government. And so we have a federalism system that allows these wonderful experiments in states around the country and allows the federal government to sort of oversee and take care of the things that no one state can handle. The thing is, though, the word united is in there too, and it's supposed to be the United States. So we established one system of government to govern us all, even though each state has its own unique plans and purposes and kind of state personality. We have a united set of states that we all understand that we are part of one country, not 50 countries, one country. And frankly, I think the Civil War, in addition to being fought over slavery, was fought over whether that principle I've just enunciated is true. I think it was intended to be true by our founding fathers, but of course, remember the Constitution was passed after 250 years of the colonies thinking of themselves as their own countries, in effect, reporting to Great Britain, of course, under the king, but still their kind of own countries, their own sovereign territories. And this idea of all of that being subsumed under one government was something that, while they agreed to intellectually, I think it took a long time for people to actually imbibe that and say, yeah, you know, we really are one country. Most people weren't talking that way. They were thinking of themselves as Virginians or as Marylanders or whatever it might be. Ben Franklin was one of the first and earliest people to talk about the colonies as a united group, as somehow one entity rather than many. So we're the United States. Now it says, in order to form a more perfect union, we're not perfect and we never will be. But the point of these words is to remind us that it's an ongoing process, that we're supposed to be constantly striving to do it better. And we've got people now who think that our country just needs to be torn apart, just ripped up, just destroyed. When in fact, what we ought to be doing is uniting together across all racial and cultural lines as Americans to form this more perfect union, to create this more perfect union. And we didn't get everything right. I mentioned in a sermon that Ben Franklin was writing essays about women's right to vote in the early 1700s. And I said, it took another 100 years for that to happen. I was wrong. It took 200 years for it to happen. So we haven't gotten everything right, but we've been constantly moving in that direction, constantly understanding better and better our responsibility as a nation to preserve and to expand human rights wherever it's appropriate. Now, of course, that gets twisted and it gets perverted, but nevertheless, I think Americans who understand who we are always want us to be a better nation, a fair nation, a nation that allows more people the opportunity to fulfill their God-given potential. We want a more perfect union. We don't want a civil war. I hear people talking about that these days. We don't need an insurrection. We don't need states seceding. What we need is to make our union more perfect. And the way we do that, in my view, is we rally around those principles that formed the nation in the first place. Then it says to ensure domestic tranquility. Wow, wouldn't that be nice right about now? Given the fact that we've had 570 riots in 220 locations around the country in the last 90 days. Most people aren't aware of that, but we have had massive social upheaval in our country. But when our founders wrote the Constitution, they understood the tendency of people toward violence and toward upheaval. And they said part of this Constitution's role is to ensure domestic tranquility. In other words, that we're not going to be ruled by the mob. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why James Madison railed against democracy. He saw pure democracy as mob rule. And he said that a republic would solve some of those problems that are inherent in democracies that degenerate into mob rule. Well, notice a lot of people on the left today, they talk about democracy, democracy, democracy. Well, some who call themselves conservatives do that as well. And I remind them, we're not a democracy. We weren't designed to be. We are a constitutional republic. And what that means is there are restraints on our government and on us that even the majority cannot remove, because we recognize individual liberties even when the majority doesn't like it. So we want to ensure domestic tranquility, and the way to do that is to come back to those fundamental principles that were established at our founding. And then it says, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. And of course, we know the common defense means to provide for the safety and security of our people from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And thank God we've got a president who understands that. I think we've got some people who think that our military are the enemy, that our police officers are the enemy, that law enforcement is the enemy. And I'm not saying that they can't make mistakes. I'm not saying that nobody can ever do anything wrong in those areas, because here again, we're talking about human beings here, not robots. Of course, people can make mistakes. Of course, bad people can get involved in these things. But nevertheless, there is a need for the common defense in our country. And all the stuff of defunding the police and dismantling the police and this disdain for law and order is contrary to everything our Constitution represents, and the general welfare. And by the way, that's not talking about welfare checks. That's talking about the general well-being of our country, that we want a country in which all of us can live and work and raise our families and educate our children and do that in a state of peace. And right now we've got people around our country, sadly, who are trying to undermine that. And that's why this Constitution Day is so very, very important, because right now there's so many people who are trying to wrench us away from those principles that have allowed America to exist so long and prosper so long. And we simply can't allow them to do it. That's why we're doing this reading, because we want to bring people back to the importance of our Constitution. And then it says this is critical: to secure the blessings of liberty. To secure the blessings of liberty. I love that phrase, because here again, it implies A, that the Constitution is not giving us rights, the Constitution is securing rights, and B, that those rights come from God. Blessings come from God, the blessings of liberty. And the Constitution is intended to secure those blessings. You know, people say that the Constitution is a secular document. That phrase right there indicates to me that the founding fathers understood that you can't separate the sacred from the secular, not with the kind of government that we are establishing. They weren't establishing Christianity as an official religion, but they were establishing this principle that our rights come from our Creator. Now that you could call that a religious principle, a statement of faith, but I just think it's reality. The understanding that my right to freedom of conscience, your right to freedom of conscience, our right to live our lives as we choose, whether we're Christians or Jews or Muslims or atheists, that right is inherent in us as human beings. It's not delegated to us by some human entity or institution. It's inherent in us as human beings because it's given to us by Almighty God. And remember, God didn't make Adam and Eve robots. He made them free individuals, and in their freedom, they rebelled against him. He didn't stop them from doing it. He didn't want them to do it, but he didn't stop them from doing it. So I say, if even Almighty God gave his creation the freedom to disagree with him, who does the government think it is to tell us that we've got to yield and bend? Or who do these, I think what we could call now de facto mini states or big tech, who do they think they are to tell us you got to think a certain way, you've got to talk a certain way, you've got to write a certain way, or we're going to shut you down, we're going to stop you. I know they're not government entities technically, but they have so much power and so much influence that I think we've really got to shift the paradigm and think of them as states, because I think they really are a threat to our constitutional way of life. So to secure to ourselves the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain. There's another sacred word, do ordain. Now, our founding fathers understood that was not a secular word, meaning that they were setting aside, to ordain is to set aside as sacred. We are setting aside as sacred and establishing this Constitution for the United States of America. That's the preamble, folks. I know I read it to you line by line, but that's the preamble. Let me say one or two other things, and then my part is done. The writer of the preamble was a guy named Gouverneur Morris. Gouverneur was his first name. He wasn't a governor of anything. That was his first name. Born in New York and sort of moved between Pennsylvania and New York in some of his official capacities. But he is really the author of the preamble. And what in this hyper racial age, what a lot of people may not know is he was one of the most vehement opponents to slavery in that Constitutional Convention. He railed against it. And somehow he ended up with the responsibility for drafting the preamble. And you know, to me, it was a kind of homage of the founding fathers to their opposition to slavery, to choose the most vehement opponent of slavery to write the preamble. I think they were saying, we want him to write it because he captures the spirit of who we are and what we stand for. And I'm really gratified by this. Let me just share with you a couple of things that he said during the convention. We know that James Madison was taking notes and did a tremendous job of sort of giving us the sense of what happened during that multiple month meeting that took place. But here's some of what he said. And by the way, Governor Morris apparently was the most outspoken member of the convention. You all know, I'm sure, that George Washington said almost nothing. But Governor Morris, they say,
information you're going to get today.
Governor Morris spoke to me. Are we able to mute people?
Father God, that would be get.
Governor Morris spoke the most. And here's some of what he said. He said on slavery, he said, upon what principle is it that the slave shall be computed in the representation? Are they men? Then make them citizens and let them vote. Are they property? Why then is there no other property included? And then he goes on to say, the houses in this city are worth more than all the wretched slaves which cover the rice swamps of South Carolina. He said, the admission of slaves into the representation, when fairly explained, comes to this, that the inhabitant of Georgia and South Carolina who goes to the coast of Africa and in defiance of the most sacred laws of humanity, tears away his fellow creatures from their dearest connections and damns them to the most cruel bondages, shall have more votes in a government instituted for protection of the rights of mankind than the citizens of Pennsylvania or New Jersey, who views with a laudable horror so nefarious a practice. Now we understand what he was doing. He was condemning the 3/5 clause. He was condemning that compromise. He was saying, we've done this because of Georgia and North Carolina, but he was saying it's an abomination. And once again, when people say, well, America's a racist country, America's a white supremacist country, and I tell them all the time, slavery and race was hotly debated from the very beginning of this, the settling of this continent. And here's proof positive that even at the Constitutional Convention, the person who wrote the preamble was railing against slavery. And the only reason why it did not get condemned and outlawed in the Constitution is that Georgia and South Carolina simply weren't going to have it. They would have folded up their tent and gone home and broken up the unity of that convention if they tried to do that. So they put it off to another day. They outlawed the slave trade, of course, as you all know, starting in 1808, and tried to step by step get rid of it. And of course, it didn't ultimately end until after 600,000 Americans lost their lives in the Civil War. But that preamble, when you think about who wrote it, when you think about what it says, I think it tells us a lot about the nature of our Constitution. And all of us need to recognize it and honor it and respect it, and certainly demand that our public officials do so. I want to remind everybody that we have a citizen's oath to the Constitution on our website, standamerica.us. I hope you will check that out and sign that oath. I took that oath as a Marine. Many veterans have. Everybody who becomes a naturalized citizen does. But those of us who are born here never have to do that. And we don't want government to force us to do something like that. But it's a great gesture for those of you who want to do something like that. So you can say, I too have taken an oath to the Constitution of the United States. So listen, God bless each and every one of you. I will be with you off and on over the next 3 hours and come back and close out with some remarks at the end. But I'm going to stop there. Thank you, Pastor Marlon. Thank you all.
I'm Janet from New York. I will read Article 1, Sections 1 and 2. Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. The number of persons shall not the number of persons shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment.
So who's next up?
I'm Janet from New York. I will read Article 1, Sections 1 and 2. Article 1, Section 1, Congress. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members of every chosen second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States. And who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole. I think we're having a problem.
Oh, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, no, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to repeat the last one where I just left off. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years in such manner as that shall by law direct. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment.
All right, wonderful.
This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and I'm from New Jersey.
There you go, Jerome. Welcome.
And I'm going to read Article 1, Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, of the second class at the expiration of the 4th year, and of the third class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen. Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also a President pro tempore in the absence of the Vice President, or when he shall exercise the office of the President of the United States. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law.
All right, thank you, Jerome. Who's next?
Jim Wright.
Jim Wright's up from Virginia. My pleasure to read this document. What a blessing to the United States to have this document. Section 4 reads, the times and places and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state of the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the place of choosing senators. The Congress shall assemble at least once every year, and such meeting place shall be, and it's been a change later on by our Constitution, but unless they shall Rosa Brown's invading. Section 5, each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Each house shall determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with concurrence with 2/3 expel a member. Each house shall keep a journal of the proceedings. and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. And the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without consent of the others, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place, that in that which the two houses shall be sitting. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be apportioned to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall be created, or the annulments thereof shall have been increased during such time. And no such person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Conclusion.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Bren from Ohio. Article 1, Section 7, legislative process. God bless the United States. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to that House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large in their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If, after such reconsideration, 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the president within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be a law. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Claire from Virginia, and I'm going to read from the United States Constitution now. Article 1, Section 8, Powers of Congress. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. To borrow money on the credit of the United States. To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. To coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. To establish post offices and post roads. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. To provide and maintain a navy. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. To provide for calling forth the militia, to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof.
Thank you, Claire.
Marlon from Virginia. I will be reading section 9 and 10 of Article 1. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. No money shall be drawn from the treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. No state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay.
Hello, I am J. Christian Adams, president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and I am bringing us to Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with a vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint, in such a manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator, representative, or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. And they shall make a list of all the persons voted for and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if there be more than one who have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in like manner choose the president. But in choosing a president, the vote shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member of members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of the states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors then shall be vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have an equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day of which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. No person except a natural born citizen or citizen of the United States at any time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of the president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. In case of the removal of the president from office or upon his death or resignation or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. And the Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the vice president and the president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president shall be elected. The president shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation, which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he has been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, I have been asked to make some short commentary about this section. The most obvious one I want to make is it's changed. What I read to you is no longer the operative law, or at least a portion of it is no longer the operative law because of the 12th Amendment, which changed the way that we enact the president and vice president. That's why we had John Adams and Thomas Jefferson serving as president and vice president, even though they hated each other at the time, because the person who came in second became the vice president. If this law were, if this amendment were still in place now, next January, President Trump may be sworn in and vice president may be sworn in would be Joe Biden. But alas, it's changed. The important part to understand, of course, is that the president is not directly elected by the people, and that is for a reason. There are many reasons, actually, one of which is because the president is an instrument of the states. The president is not a result of a direct popular vote. It's not a democratic institution. It is somebody who represents all of the states as independent sovereigns. One of the benefits of doing that is you have a broader cross-section of appeal to the individual. In other words, President Trump must win the Deep South, the Mountain West, and the industrial heartland to become president. Bill Clinton had to win the South, the Northeast, and the Pacific West to become president. In other words, it prevents presidents from having isolated geographic bases. Let me leave with this last thought of what else it does. The Electoral College ensures that the President of the United States this year will not be elected from Boston, New York, Miami, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. If you had direct popular vote, because of the voting patterns in those places where you can have polarization upwards of 90% or more, those places would be electing the president, and they would be the focus of all the presidential campaigns because of the ability to reach those people in large media markets. It forces candidates to go across the country and campaign across the country. It also dilutes, and my topic that I'm most interested in at the Public Interest Legal Foundation, it dilutes the effect of voter fraud. The whole country doesn't suffer because of the voter fraud that occurs in Philadelphia, Detroit, and other places. So that's the Electoral College. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Yes. Leon Threet, Charlotte, North Carolina. I have the privilege of reading Section 2, Article 2. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. And he shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper, in the president alone and in the courts of law or in the heads of departments. The president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. Article Section 3. Article 2, Section 3. He shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. Section 4, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and convicted of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pastor Tim Throckmorton from Ohio, and I serve the Family Research Council as well. I'm reading Article 3 and Section 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. Section 1. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Section 2. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, and to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes shall have been committed, but when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless, on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted.
Hi, I'm Connie from Kentucky, and proud to be an American and couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. So sorry about that. Anyway, I'm going to be reading Article 4, Section 1 through 4. So Section 1, full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the Congress may, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. Section 3, new states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned, as well as the Congress. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence.
Hello, my name is Arthur Devine, and I am about to read for the United States Constitution, Article 5. I hope you can hear me. Here I go. Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of several states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the 1st and 4th classes in the 9th section of this first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. Now on to Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding, the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. And finally, Article 7, the ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishments of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same. I'm finished.
Michael Farris from the Alliance Defending Freedom.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. There are 6 specific freedoms protected by the First Amendment. 2 of these deal with religious freedom, which is what we're going to discuss for a few minutes today. Religious freedom has 2 basic components. First, the government cannot establish a religion, and second, the government cannot prohibit the free exercise of religion. By way of overview, cases that fall under the Establishment Clause deal with the issue of how much the government can get involved with religious activity. Free exercise cases, on the other hand, arise when the government tries to interfere with the ability of religious people or religious organizations when they want to live out and practice their faith. The first Supreme Court case that I argued on November 6, 1985, was an Establishment Clause case. This case gives you a good idea of what kind of cases arise under the Establishment Clause. I represented a man named Larry Witters. Larry was legally blind. He had a degenerative eye disease that limited his sight, and eventually he was going blind, and he was eligible for vocational rehabilitation funding from the state of Washington, which was a mixture of state money and federal money for this program for the blind. And he could go to pretty much any college he wanted to, public or private, in the state, except for the fact that he was not eligible to go to religious colleges. And specifically, he wanted to become a pastor, missionary, or youth worker, and it was his choice of vocation that was the real impediment. And the state of Washington took the position that for the state to fund a person who wanted to become a pastor, a missionary, or youth worker, that violated the federal Establishment Clause. I argued the case at every level of court that it was in. At first, it was an administrative hearing in the Spokane area. The case arose because Larry lived in Spokane and was going to a Bible college that was there at the time. It since has changed its approach. There's a different college today, but it was then called Inland Empire School of the Bible. And so we argued the case in the administrative hearing. Then there was an appeal to the Spokane County Superior Court before a judge named Marcus Kelly. And then it went state to the state Supreme Court, skipping past the Court of Appeals within the state. And the Supreme Court of Washington ruled in a split decision against Larry Witters. We appealed that to the Supreme Court of the United States. And in 1985, when I had been out of law school for 9 years, I argued this case in the Supreme Court of the United States. And the issue really in the case was, can the state of Washington fund the education for Larry Witters? That's the way the state of Washington wanted to argue the case. But let's return to the text of the First Amendment. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That means that when we look at Larry Witters' program, we don't look at the individual, just the individual participation in the program. That will lead you astray. You look at the law involved. What did the law provide? The law provided blind people could get vocational training. That was what the law provided. And so the program's constitutionality is judged by looking at the program as a whole, not by looking at the individual. And so we won the case unanimously in the Supreme Court of the United States. And it was on that very basis that the court said that the state of Washington, including its state Supreme Court, had looked at the program as if the state of Washington had passed a bill just for Larry Witters. But they didn't do that. They had a program for the blind as a whole. And it was not a violation of the Establishment Clause for the state of Washington to permit Larry Witters to participate in that program. If they had a broad general program, then they could allow Larry to participate. But if they had a program aimed just at religion and only religious people or only religious institutions were able to participate, that would be entirely different. But the rule from the Larry Witters case was that people cannot be excluded from government programs simply because the government is afraid of the Establishment Clause. So governments do have some ability to choose. Now, let's turn to the second clause, and that is to the free exercise clause. And I want to talk about two different cases on the free exercise clause. One is a case that ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, I'm the president of Alliance Defending Freedom, our team litigated about 3.5 years ago in the Supreme Court. And that was the Trinity Lutheran case versus the state of Missouri. And in that case, it was very similar to the Larry Witters case in the beginning. That is, the program allowed funding for preschool safety equipment, or really activity. It was a program that took tire remnants and used those tire remnants to provide rubber coating on playground surfaces, so that if little kids fell at the preschool on the playground, they were much less likely to get hurt because they're falling on a rubberized surface, not on sand or gravel or what have you, or just regular ground. And so the preschool of the Lutheran Church applied to participate in this program that gave partial reimbursement for the playground surfacing, and they were fully qualified. They were fully allowed by the state law. But again, the state Supreme Court and state courts held that the playgrounds, or the state government rather than, of course, the state government held that the playgrounds could not do that because of the separation of church and state ideal. And we contended that to apply separation of church and state in this area violated the free exercise clause. It's one thing for the government to, the Establishment Clause permits the government to treat religious people equally. The free exercise clause requires the government to treat religious people equally. And that was the outcome of that case in Trinity Lutheran. We won that case 7-2, saying that religious people had to be treated equally. We have another case I'll briefly mention that's working its way through the courts. It was preliminarily in the Supreme Court of the United States. We represent a Calvary Chapel church in Nevada, and that church is being treated less favorably than casinos are being treated. And the courts are looking at this on the basis of quality. And there's a debate, are casinos the right comparators in the COVID management, or should they be looking more like movie theaters? Casinos are pretty open. Movie theaters are pretty well regulated and closed. And so, but the question is, why are churches only being treated equally? The Free Exercise Clause says that churches cannot be regulated. You cannot prohibit the free exercise of religion. And so the correct standard should be the government's proof that this is absolutely necessary for churches should be at the highest possible level, not comparatively equal with a casino or a theater. It should be at the highest level. And so we're continuing to press that case to argue that the religious freedom, that free exercise of religion, should grant greater liberty. Just like the press is completely open during COVID, so too religious freedom should be completely open during COVID. You can't regulate free press in this way, and you can't regulate freedom of religion in a fashion that constrains it, even during a sickness like COVID. So those are the two clauses, and it is our privilege at the ADF to be working on cases of both characters. God bless you all.
My name.
Go ahead, Philip.
Okay. My name is Philip Van Cleve, and I am the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. I'll be reading the Second Amendment and commenting on the right to keep and bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Our basic civil rights are natural rights, God-given rights bestowed on us at birth. They are not bequeathed to us by a benevolent government. The Second Amendment, like other parts of the Bill of Rights, is telling the government to keep its hands off those civil rights. The Founding Fathers discussed their thinking on the right to keep and bear arms publicly well before the Second Amendment was adopted. There were three reasons that the Second Amendment was viewed as important. The right to self-defense was mentioned and was assumed to be a given for a free man. The ability to protect the country was also discussed. Hurricane Katrina was an example of people needing to be able to protect their neighborhoods and themselves by banding together when the government is unable or unwilling to help. The one that was spelled out in the Second Amendment, however, was the protection of a free state by we, the people. That includes the ability to take back the country should the government ever turn tyrannical against the people. The Founding Fathers knew that if a future government was going to take away the right to keep and bear arms, it would be doing so for the purpose of becoming a tyranny. That's why the Founding Fathers listed the security of a free state specifically in the amendment as a key reason that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And indeed, now we see an attack on many avenues of our rights. And we even see police being defunded, and the Second Amendment is under full bore attack. Here in Virginia, we have really seen massive attacks on that right. We've been able to fend back a lot of it, but it's very much under attack. And it's all happening at the same time, along with some other events that sort of foretell what the founding fathers were concerned about and warning us about. The right to keep and bear arms is unique to the United States, and it is the canary in the coal mine. If that canary dies, the rest of our freedoms will follow quickly behind it. It is the thing that stands between us being free men and being slaves. Slaves do not have the right to keep and bear arms. In fact, whenever one nation takes over another nation, the first thing they do is to completely strip away all armament from citizens, as well as what was the remnants of what had been the other government. The Second Amendment serves not only to remind the government to not infringe on that right, and it sadly has been infringed upon, but it serves to remind us, we, the people, that we are not to let that right be ripped from our grip, whatever the cost. Thank you.
I'm Marlon again from Virginia. I will read Amendment 3. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
Go on, Patty.
Hello.
Start when you're ready.
Oh, you're ready for me to start?
Yes,
Yes, we're ready.
Thank you. Greetings to all. Hello. I'm Patty Lyman. I'm very privileged to be part of this very special event today. I will start by reading the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments of the Constitution, and then I'll discuss due process. 4th Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. The 5th Amendment, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentation or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The 6th Amendment, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. The Due Process Clause was contained in the Fifth Amendment, and it reads as thus: nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Like absolutely everything that ever matters in life, everything that's important started with the Bible and started with God's word. In 1644, a Scottish Presbyterian minister named Samuel Rutherford published a book called Lex Rex, or The Law of the Prince. In it, he refuted the age-old custom from starting in the Roman Empire that the law is whatever the king says it is. Rather, Rutherford had a new concept that he borrowed from the Old Testament. The Old Testament's definition of a nation was of the Hebrew nation, and it was defined as people living according to the law that God had already given. It was adherence to the law that defined the nation, not who its ruler was at any given moment. Since the law preceded the king, then the king should be subject to the law. Lex Rex means that the law is the king. This concept is a primary foundation of the Declaration of Independence, which would later be followed by the US Constitution we celebrate today and the Bill of Rights. The reason that due process is so important is that individuals are acknowledged to have certain unalienable rights that were given to them by God, not government. Those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In this context, they're described as limits on the government depriving us of our life, liberty, or our property. It is due process of law that ensures that these unalienable rights are not taken unjustifiably or via error. I will focus today on procedural due process, which consists of the practical steps, tools, and protections that are afforded a person facing loss of life, liberty, or property. At the most basic level, due process consists of notice and an opportunity to be heard. If you come home from school, you're a teenager, you come home from school and your parents tell you you're grounded, that doesn't feel right if you have no idea why you've been grounded. What we expect in terms of due process at home is that our parents tell us, this is what has happened, this is why I'm going to punish you, and that's giving us notice, and then we are made aware of what we can do to correct any mistakes of fact in that process. The government is required to give notice to a person that they are accused of a crime and to give them sufficient understanding of the consequences of that crime and what he needs to do in order to object to the charges. The government also has to take significant action, not just to give notice to a person of what they're being accused of, but to take reasonable effort to make absolutely sure that the person has actually received that notice. That's an obligation on the part of the accuser or the government. If you can prove that you were never given notice of the charges against you or never got your court notice, the charges will be dismissed against you until you are lawfully served notice. This has nothing to do with your guilt or innocence, but it's about limitations on the government's power over you. Notice is extremely important. Once you're notified, due process also means that you cannot be deprived of your life, liberty, or your property without you having a chance to fully challenge the charges in front of a decision maker who can listen to both sides, determine the actual facts fairly, and then apply the law to those facts. Some of the elements of due process are mentioned in the Sixth Amendment that I just read, such as the right to counsel, discovery of the government's evidence, and the right to confront any and all witnesses against you. It's very important that the person, let's say the judge, making a decision in your case is impartial and unbiased. The same person cannot serve as the accuser and the adjudicator. Remember when I talked earlier about the concept of lex rex? We do not have one person who serves as judge, jury, and executioner. That would be just as if he were a king. We left aside the idea of a king being in control over the law. The law controls the king. The king is subject to the law. The same thing happens in the case of a judge in a tribunal. The prohibition on judges being biased is based on the common law rule which of course originates in the Bible, that a judge has to remove himself, it's called recuse himself, if he has any significant interest in a case that might possibly appear to make him unfair. What's extremely important about due process that we have to remember is that it's not just for the rights of the person, it's for society as a whole to have confidence in the systems that the government uses if it's going to deprive us of our unalienable rights. Due process also includes your right to establish the real facts in the case, not just the accuser's opinion or allegations. This can be done by you questioning a witness to expose whether the witness is mistaken, forgetful, biased against you, or just plain dishonest. Another way that we establish the facts in front of this impartial judge is to require the government to give you all of the evidence that they have against you so that you have a chance to show that that evidence is not true and that under the law you are not guilty. Finally, your adjudicator in your case will give a decision of guilt or innocence based on what the adjudicator determined the facts to be and then applying those facts to the applicable law. But even then, even after a punishment is set down, the law still remains king, and this is how. If it's found that you were not given proper due process before the government took action to deprive you of your life, liberty, or property, if that's determined, then your case, your conviction gets thrown out and you are given another chance to have another trial where you are provided due process. Doesn't matter how guilty you are or are not, it's the provision of the process that is important. Remember, the law is king. It's not just about the outcome, it's about the process. The individual's God-given rights are so paramount to our founders that they made it clear from the beginning that the government would be subservient to the law and not the law being made by the government, except by the consent of the governed. I think what impresses me the most about due process in our system is that it not only acknowledges the absolute unalienable rights that are given to us by God, pre-existing rights. It not only acknowledges them, but it requires that the rights afforded us and the process that we go through before any of those rights are infringed upon or deprived, it ensures that they are applied equally. Remember, all men are created equal and are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. I thank God every day for due process and how it respects the value and the dignity of every individual.
Donna from North Carolina, and I'm going to read Amendments 7 to 10. And 6, at common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved and no
Can you get closer to your mic, please? Can you get closer to your mic?
Yeah. And 6, at common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved and no fact tried by jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Amendment 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by any of the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Thank you. Bless everyone.
Thank you. Somebody trying to get set up. Oh, there you go, Mr. Rosa.
Rosa from. I'm reading from the 11th and 12th Amendment of the Constitution. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. The 12th Amendment. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. They shall make distinct lists of persons voted for president and of all persons voted for as vice president, and the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, direct to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House Representatives, open all the certificates, and votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president. If such number be a majority of the whole number of the electors appointed, and if no person has such majority, then for the person having the highest numbers exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by states. The representation from each state having one vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states. The majority of all the states shall be necessary to be a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before 4th day of March next following, the vice president shall act as president, as in the case of the death or other constitutional disability of the president. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if no person have a majority, then the 2 highest numbers of the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice, but no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of the president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States.
Marlon, again from Virginia. Mike Scholler was to be the reader for these next amendments, but his internet is down because of the remnant of Hurricane Sally. So I will be reading Amendment 13 and Amendment 14, Sections 1 and 2. Amendment 13, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 14, Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. In Section 2, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged, except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state.
Good afternoon. My name is James Murphy, and I am proudly from Central Virginia. Like many of you, I've risen my hand multiple times in the United States Navy and in the Department of Defense to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm truly honored today as an American and also as a representative of the Republican nominee for Virginia's 5th Congressional District, Mr. Bob Good, to read to you now sections 3 through 5 of the 14th Amendment of our Constitution. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Section 3, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Section 4, the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Section 5, the Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Again, thank you very much.
I'm Dick, and I'm in the state of Maryland, and I'm honored to be part of this process. The Constitution is unique in all the world. We're part of Sharia Crime Stoppers. The reason I believe we're represented here today is to just mention the threat that is coming against the Constitution every day in America that's related to Islamic law, that is Sharia. We've heard about America as a country where the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Sharia sanctions crimes that would be called sedition. We've also heard that in America there is no slavery. Sharia sanctions crimes that treats women as property. So thank you for the opportunity. 15th, 16th, and 17th Amendment. Section 1 of the 15th Amendment. Section 1, the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Moving on to Amendment 16, the 16th Amendment, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes of income, taxes on incomes, from whatever sources derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. And the 17th Amendment of the Constitution, the Senate of the United States shall be comprised of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years. And each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. Final comment, I hope that we are able to read the Constitution out loud on Constitution Day in the year 2021. Thank you.
Daniel Gate, are you there? Okay, Daniel Gate was to read Amendment 18 and 19, Amendments 18 and 19, so I'll go ahead and read those. Amendment 18, Section 1. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation thereof, into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. Section 2, the Congress and the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Section 3, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. Amendment 19. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
20th Amendment, sections 1 through 6. Section 1. The terms of the president and the vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified, and the terms of their successors shall then begin. Section 2. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Section 3. If at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the president-elect shall have died, the vice president-elect shall become president. If a president shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the president-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the vice president-elect shall act as president until a president shall have qualified, and the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as president, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly until a president or vice president shall have qualified. Section 4. The Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a vice president, whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Section 5. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. Section 6, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission.
Hello, I'm Pastor Melvin Johnson from Texas, and I will read to you the 21st and 22nd Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Section 1 of the 21st Amendment. The 18th article of the amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. Section 2, the transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. Section 3, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress. The 22nd Amendment, Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of president when this article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president or acting as president during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of president or acting as president during the remainder of such term. Section 2, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission to the states by the Congress.
Iverson Jackson.
Are you asking for me?
No, Pastor Iverson was supposed to read next. We're very early, so I'm sure he's probably not on yet. So I'll go ahead and read that. Amendment 23, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of president and vice president to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th article of amendment. Section 2, the Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 14, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. In Section 2, the Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Jody? You need to unmute yourself.
This is Amendment 25. In case of the removal of president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses. Section 3, whenever the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president.
Rosemary? You need to unmute yourself.
I'll be reading the last two amendments, the 26th and the 27th Amendment. And I find it very appropriate that I should be reading this 15 miles from Philadelphia, where this all took place. So God bless America. 26th Amendment, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And the last amendment, the 27th Amendment, no law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened.
We accidentally skipped Amendment 25, Section 4, so I'll go ahead and read that. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office.
Right. And I think that concludes the reading of the Constitution. We're about an hour earlier than we thought we were going to be, aren't we? Right?
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, listen, I began by reading the preamble to the Constitution, and I read it line by line and commented on it line by line. But, you know, the preamble was written last. So I thought this would be an appropriate way to end our reading today. What the preamble actually says is, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And, you know, I marvel when I think about the fact that we've had 2 hours to read the entire Constitution, and we've had 5 commentators as well. And it didn't take us quite 2 hours to get through that. And yet we just read the most successful governing document in the history of mankind. It's really not very long. and it's amazing when you think about it, that we have governed ourselves under this Constitution for 233 years. I really believe that that's the blessing and favor of Almighty God. And I am so proud of my country. Now we've got to meet the challenge that Ben Franklin met when he met Mrs. Powell coming out of the Constitutional Convention. And she asked, well, doctor, what have you given us, a monarchy or republic? And of course, his answer was a republic if you can keep it. And I know that all of you, and I hope all of you watching on Facebook and YouTube and on our website all of you are as determined as we are to keep it. And that means on November 3rd and before, if you can vote early, you've got to get out and vote. And you've got to vote your constitutional values. You got to vote your Christian values. You got to vote the value that you place upon your own liberty, because there's only one candidate and that seems to understand any of that or care about it, and that is President Donald J. Trump. And so I hope that all of you watching will get everybody you know who cares about this Constitution, cares about our country, cares about our future, cares about our children and grandchildren, and our posterity, as the founding fathers mentioned, our posterity, to get out and vote for President Donald J. Trump, to give him 4 more years to help us save our country from these Marxists and socialists. Listen, Communist Lives Matter and Antifa out there, who I think want to destroy. Weird, perverse. God bless each and every one of you. I'm telling you, November, but we're going to win for our garbage that's being offered to our young people and so many of our citizens. This racial division, this Marxism, this totalitarian spirit that has arisen in COVID. We're going to cast it on the dung heap of history, never to rise and trouble the American people again. And we're going to remain a shining city on a hill, the land of the free and the home of the brave. So God bless each and every one of you. And we'll see you again soon, somewhere in the midst of what we're doing. We have a call every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern time. We've got a Stand Against Communism call at 3 o'clock every Wednesday Eastern time. And I'm on the radio on American Family Radio, AFR.net, noon, 1 o'clock Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So somewhere along the way, I'm sure we're going to connect. So in the meantime, God bless you. And remember, we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we're on God's side. And Pastor Marlon, thank you for a job. Very, very, very well done. This was absolutely tremendous. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
God bless America. Bye, everybody.
God bless America.